Building Lifestyles, a show designed to help everyday Australians create a lifestyle that inspires them using property development strategies. On the show, you'll hear from everyday people changing their lives doing property development. You'll learn from their successes as well as some of the challenges they've faced along the way. We also talk to experts from a range of fields who share specialised techniques that you can use to accelerate your property journey. I'm your host, Amanda McEwen, and I'm the founder of the Rising Star Developer. And I'm really passionate about helping everyday Australians build lifestyle using property development. Hello there. Welcome to today's podcast. We're in February and our intention was to launch this around Valentine's Day, given the focus of today's podcast is around how to get your partner on board. But true to form, Al and I don't really celebrate Valentine's Day too much, so it's not surprising that we're a couple of weeks late. Anyway, one of the key things that common challenges that we uncover when we're speaking to people about exploring property development is a lot of people ask, how do I get my partner on board? I really want to do property, but they're not sure. They don't believe in that I can do it for whatever reason. So today's podcast, I have a very, very special guest who is none other than my husband, Alistair, to give you his perspective on how I managed to get him on board to embark upon our property development journey. So hello, Al.
Very nice to be here, Amanda.
Quite weird. We're sitting across from each other and talking to a microphone. So bear with us. So I want to take a step back because ironically, the tables were a bit reversed when we started our property journey, because you may already know this story, but our whole property journey began in the maternity ward after the arrival of our third child. So it was day two. We had day two of sleepless nights. I had a 15-month-old and a 2.5-month-old bouncing on the bed behind us. And I remember it quite clearly. And Al was sitting across from me and he goes, Amanda, why don't we think about investing in property? And I remember very clearly at the time, I don't think I even said anything. I think my glare at Al at that point in time just shut the conversation down because I was not open to it. I was sleep deprived for starters. But what happened, as you may know the story, is it wasn't until I had to go back to work and we both had to work because we had a big mortgage to pay and having to put our kids into childcare. And then I realized, for me, it was a pain driven. I didn't want to be at the mercy of somebody else's schedule, and I wanted control over my time, and I wanted the ability to earn more income than was currently capped. And so for me, ironically, Al was the first person who planted the seed around property, but it wasn't for me until I was ready, because the pain was worse than actually keeping on doing what I was doing, that I opened my mind to exploring property development. And then fast forward our journey of buying and holding and doing a couple of renos, then we got exposed to property development. And in the dynamic of our relationship, ours definitely the risk-averse one, and the opposite. And that seems to be a common theme in a lot of relationships. There's always one that is a bit more nervous, a bit more risk-averse, and there's the other one wants to run 100 miles an hour. So Al, just take us back to when we started exploring property development. Do you remember exactly when I suggested the whole concept?
Property development?
Yes.
Not specifically. I mean, I also remember the conversation in the maternity ward where I think we were trying to think of, alternative ways to, build an income stream for ourselves, mainly so we could get you out of the workforce. So that was number three, after number three that we had that conversation.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And, I think we were talking about the fact that it was going to be difficult with three kids, with both of us in full-time work, and we needed some alternative strategies. So, I sort of planted the seed initially of investing in property, and that sort of evolved. As you said, that's evolved from investing in property to renovations and property development. But back to your question, in terms of when you first mentioned property development, no, I can't remember. I can't remember when you first mentioned it, or in what context?
Okay, I'll jog your memory because I'd done a couple of renovations, and at the time I was looking for other strategies to done a couple of unit renos. So I was looking at strategies to try and find deals off market. And I've always invested in my own education, and I remember I wanted to learn from an educator who would be able to teach us. So that would have been a further, I think it was $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 investment at the time. And I remember hearing this educator, and he really focused on talking about risk. And I thought, okay, if I want to take our business to the next level, I need to get Al in front of this guy, because he will effectively do the selling for me for us to take our business to the next level. So I think I ended up making sure, sorry, I've got a dog who's deciding to try and get involved in the podcast, Rocket. I remember bringing you along to an event so you could actually hear him speak. And I think he mentioned risk. He mentioned all the things that were just music to a risk-averse person's ears. And then after that, Al gave me the go-ahead to invest in the first program, which was just to learn how to find deals off market. And so that was a strategy that I had in my own mind to get Al on board, which seemed to work because it dealt with Al's concerns around risk. And then we flew to Perth to do this program. Sorry, now our dog decides to roll around behind us, so just bear with us. The joys of impromptu animal activity. Anyway, so we flew to Perth, did this 3-day course. And while we were at this course, this is when we got introduced to the concept of property development. And we were sitting next to each other. And I remember it was a big investment at the time to be able to learn how to do property development and really take that next step. It was about a $40,000 investment. And I remember at the time thinking, oh my God, I really want to do this. This just sounds like the solution that we've been looking for a number of years. We tried a number of different property strategies. It just hadn't given us the lifestyle that we were wanting. They were actually tying us to our job. And that was our buying and holding strategy. And just what we're being told, it just seemed like it was finally the answer we were looking for. And I remember just sitting there next to Al at this conference going, I really want to do this, but there's no way he's going to let us invest $40,000 in a course, because firstly, we didn't have that money. We had still a big mortgage. I was still working for somebody. We also had bought a number of investment properties. So our debt had just got bigger as we started embarking on a property. And I don't know, Al, from your story, what made you be willing to invest that money, which was a huge amount of money at the time?
Yeah, well, I think, obviously I'm more risk averse. I'm coming from a banking and corporate finance background. So I suppose that's my, that's my natural sort of go-to, risk first before profit. And that sort of resonated with me as I started learning about property development. And I think also what sort of came to me, listening about property development is I think it was probably more of an answer to lightening your load in a sense, in that renovation was still quite labour intensive, whereas property development is you're more the project manager, and it's not necessarily as time intensive as renovation. And I thought that would have advantages for us in terms of our personal situation in managing our sort of collective time to look after our kids and so forth. But also if it was done well, if it was done right, it could be a more lucrative property strategy for us as well.
Yeah, because I do remember sitting in my seat, and I felt like I was inside. I just really, really wanted to go and join up and invest that money, and I was just waiting for Al to say something. So I'm not going to ask because that is not going to happen. And then I think it was actually you that said, okay, I think we should really consider this. I think Al had assessed it in his own mind and assessed the risk and assessed what it could possibly do for us. And then, it was Al in the end who suggested we drew down on our home loan to be able to afford the program. But I think we knew it was a big investment, but I think we also made sure we hold ourselves accountable, because I remember when we paid for that, we sat down and said, okay, well, we want to get a return on this investment. At the time, we committed that we want to return that investment in, I think, we wanted 10 times return that investment in 24 months. And so that was our line in the sand. And as we learned the content that we got taught, and as we navigated that, because we were actually being taught the bigger end of property development, and we started looking for these big deals and then realized that, hang on a second, this is nuts. What are we doing looking for larger deals? And then we took those concepts and made it more applicable for the smaller end of town, which is what I teach through the Rising Star Developer, the small scale property development. And but yeah, certainly I think having a clear idea about what we wanted to achieve and holding ourselves accountable. And even though we had the knowledge from the big end of town, because at the end of the day, we still wanted to make sure we got a 10 times return on our investment, we then used that content and created it, adapted it in a way that was going to work for us, that was going to be able to work within our risk profile and deliver us returns that we wanted. And as a result of that, by showing up, and as frustrating as it was at times, trying to find deals, and it took longer than expected. I was sending hundreds and thousands of letters out to try and find deals off market, and it was frustrating. But at the end of the day, we had that target, and I couldn't waste that money that we did. So I think by being consistent and showing up, we end up getting a return on that investment in 15 to 18 months, not the 24 months, and it exceeded that and beyond. So while all of you listening to this, when you are planning to invest in yourself, and even now I still invest in myself every year, and each time I still get that feeling in my stomach, oh my God, am I doing the right thing? Should I be doing it? Am I wasting my money? But I always have the philosophy that even if you learn one thing that's going to help you get to where you want to get to, and hold yourself accountable and get a return on that investment, then you're always going to do well. So I guess that was our strategy, wasn't it? And I think probably, so in terms of for listeners out there, trying to work out how to get their partners on board, that's certainly our story. Have you got any tips or tricks, suggestions that you would give to somebody, especially if they've got, you being a risk averse like yourself? How do you think, what tips can you give to someone who's got a very risk averse partner to get on board?
Well, I think you've got to both respect the position from where each of you are coming. So if we use our example, your strength is finding deals, working with councils and builders and designers, and almost the creative side of a deal.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm quite often assessing what's the risk, what's the downside, what's our plan B if a strategy doesn't work, or if we have issues with planning risk, if we have issues with construction risk, if we have issues with sales risk at the end of a project. I'm often there working out what we would do in those scenarios as a plan B, and I think as long as you respect the position from which you're each coming, and then ultimately meet in the middle, then I think that's healthy.
Yeah.
Because ultimately you tend to not end up too skewed in either direction.
Yeah, and being very open and transparent. At times it's a lot of heated conversations to get to that middle ground. We've certainly had a few barneys in the past, haven't we, Al, trying to...
Pretty much the only source of our arguments.
Very, very true.
We don't really disagree on much else, except when we're assessing a development.
Yeah, so true, so true.
But as I said, ultimately we generally end up somewhere in the middle, which allows both of us to put our head on the pillow at night. And that's important because you certainly don't want to be going down a path where there's one side of the relationship that's not doing that. That's obviously unhealthy. So you need to meet in a position that you're both comfortable to move forward on.
Yeah, definitely. And I have to admit that even though it's very frustrating when, wanting to race 100 miles an hour and you pull me back and we have, some heated discussions to get to that middle ground, I think it always ends up being the right path in the middle after we've had vented our own points of view. And it has made us sharper about what we do, because I know myself, if I want to get Al on board for a deal, then I've got to think, okay, what's Al going to ask about this deal? I think, okay, well, have I assessed this risk even before I even mention it to Al to be able to say, okay, let's go down that path. So it certainly made me a lot sharper in assessing the risk of projects. And ironically, a lot of the content that I've created inside the Inner Circle, as a lot of my students would know, there's a very heavy risk focus. Every single module has a risk lesson, and that's very much driven from Al. Like all the lessons and the frustrations, the disagreements we've had to be able to get to that middle ground, I've captured and incorporated into those lessons. And you'll also always hear me mention the term risk first, profit second. Guess where that came from? It certainly wasn't me. So for those who are risk averse, if you do have a risk averse partner, that's really heavily weaved into the way that I teach and the way that I do my business now as well. So I think just to wrap things up, I'd like to run through a few tips that certainly may help if you do have a risk averse partner on board. I'll just capture what Al's also said, but things from my perspective too. And I think you raised this, Al. Like number one is really understanding your partner's needs, understanding what they're nervous about, and how can you address those uncertainties or that nervousness in a way that's going to be beneficial for both of you. So for me, in our initial journey, I knew that I needed to get Al in front of an educator that is going to deal with risk and really make him feel comfortable in that way for us to be able to move forward. So yeah, certainly start with understanding your partner's needs and then try and find a solution that's going to address their needs as well as help you get to where you want to get to. So that's number one. Two, I think is very important, is having common goals. And for us, it was really lifestyle driven, being able to have me leave the workforce so that I could be more available to our kids and help run the household. It's, for those of you who have two full-time working parents, as you know, it's a challenge and a struggle to try and manage the domestic load as well as your business load as well. So that was really important, wasn't Al? And when you have common goals, for us, it was to get rid of, get control of my time, but also to get rid of our mortgage. And if I stayed in my job, it would have taken us so many more years to be able to get to where we'd got to. So by having common goals, whether that's getting rid of your mortgage or releasing one of you from their job, or even just having enough funds to help with school fees or holidays, if you're both aligned with those end goals, then it's a lot easier to have a conversation about how you're going to try and get there. So definitely number two, have common goals. Three, I think it's really important to get your partner involved. And, I know, as I mentioned earlier, by getting your partner in front of somebody else other than yourself, it's like, it's like your children, right? You can tell them something. If they hear it from their parents, they think, okay, whatever, mum. But they hear exactly the same thing from somebody else. Suddenly it's got credibility. Probably not too dissimilar in a relationship, is it, Al? And that's certainly what happened with us, getting Al in front of another educator that would address and speak to him in the way that would address his needs around risk. That was certainly my strategy, and I think it worked. And certainly for those of you who do end up speaking with one of my property strategists, if you're going to book a call with one of my strategists, get your partner involved as well, because that way, we can have an open and transparent conversation, and my strategist can also address both of your needs in that conversation as well. And that can really help get your partner on board too. So I think it's really important, if you want to head down this property development path, make sure you have those open conversations with your partner, get them involved in a strategy call, and that will certainly help your cause to be able to embark upon that journey if you want to. And then fourthly, I think, a lesson, and it's always a balancing act, but I think it's always going to be relationship first. So, even with deals, and as frustrating as it can be if we've had some deals that have been pushed back on, and yes, I might not be happy at the time, but at the end of the day, deals come and go, your relationship's there forever. So it's really important to make sure that's at the forefront of the conversations and the discussions you have as you make progress towards your life goals. So yeah, they're the four key tips. So understand your partner's needs, 2, have common goals. 3, get them involved or get somebody else involved to help you navigate through those conversations. And 4 is relationship first. So I hope those tips really do help you have those conversations with your partner. Is there anything else, Al, that you want to add before we sign off?
I'd just say to the risk averse partners out there, there's nothing wrong with it. They are, in my professional life, some of the best and most successful property developers that I've come across. Are quite risk averse in nature, and they're always covering off on their risk first before they're thinking about their profit. So, don't be afraid to express your views. And as I said, I think both sides of the relationship need to express their views and hopefully meet in the middle somewhere to build on a successful project.
Yeah, absolutely. And for us, like a lot of people just starting out, we were way out of our comfort zone. We had a lot of fear to overcome. We had a lot of discussions to be able to get ourselves both on board. But I've got to say, for what property development has done for us in our lives and what it's provided for our family and enabled us to do has been worth every single heated conversation that we've had and every challenge that we faced in our projects and our business lives to be able to be lucky to have the lifestyle we've had. So I really hope this podcast has given you a few tips and tricks to help navigate those conversations, and look forward to supporting you further. And if you do want to have a chat to one of our property strategists who can help have those conversations with you and your partner, then be sure to go to our website, book a call, and really help you look forward to helping you embark upon your property and your lifestyle journey. Thanks for listening and see you next time. Thank you so much for listening. This is Building Lifestyles, a show designed to help everyday Australians create a lifestyle that inspires them using property development strategies. This podcast was produced by the Rising Star Developer. We've been helping Australians realise their financial and lifestyle goals since 2020. We play a pivotal role in educating, supporting and celebrating the goals and successes of our students and our community. To find out how we can help you realise your property, wealth and lifestyle goals, head to our website www.risingstardeveloper.com.au. To make sure you don't miss an episode of Building Lifestyles, be sure to subscribe to and follow the show in your favourite podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review as it really helps others find the show. I'm Amanda McEwen and we'll be back next episode with more tips on how you can build your lifestyle.